Welcome back to another episode of Founders on the Beat, where we sit down with founders to dive into how they're solving real challenges for real communities. In today's episode, we cover this urgent situation where millions of people around the world continue to struggle to keep the lights on, and how one startup is tackling this massive challenge head on. I'm actually very excited about this conversation with Meghan Wood, who was recently named in Forbes 30 Under 30 for energy and green tech. Learn from Meghan about her journey as a female founder driving change to democratize solar power, giving communities and individuals the dignity and empowerment they deserve in Puerto Rico and beyond. Hi, Meghan. It's so great to sit down with you to learn more about the reality of solar power and renewable energy and what you're doing to help communities around the world. I'd actually love to dive right into this. What was your light bulb moment that prompted you to co-found Raya Power?
Hmm. Well, thank you so much for having me on today. Really excited to be here. Light bulb moment. I honestly think so I was really excited about the power of residential solar to bring bill savings and resilience to people, and I was trying really hard to understand why more people didn't have it. And obviously heard the barriers of need to own your home, need to have a new roof, really expensive. And I kept trying to figure out why. Like, why couldn't we package it in a different way? And the light bulb moment, I guess, was I looked at the cost breakdown of residential solar, and maybe not super exciting light bulb moment, but only 40% of the cost of residential solar, at least in the US, was the hardware. The rest was soft costs. And what they mean by soft costs is permitting, design, installation, customer acquisition costs. And mainly that customer acquisition cost piece was $5,000. And I kept racking my brain, like, how could such an incredible technology have us kind of wasting $5,000 to get it to people because we weren't able to get it to people in an easy way. So I kept getting stuck on that. How do we get that $5,000 cost down so that we can actually get this to people in more accessible ways rather than having to do these huge expensive installs? So the nerd in me, the math nerd and the financial nerd loved that breakdown and was just like, there has to be a better way.
And, like just talking about all the cost breakdown and stuff and the financial aspect of it, which obviously, like when you hear about solar power, the first thought is more the logistical side, but the fact that you were thinking about the financial side, I think also speaks to your background, because I know you actually originally came from a consulting background and then moved into energy. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience? Like how did you find it transitioning careers and moving, from one area to another? Because they're very different. Like being a consultant versus being a founder is a totally different kettle of fish, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think consulting was an awesome first job or career, I guess. I had a lot of other jobs before that. To really understand how to frame problems, how to go attack them, how to use that analytical rigor to see opportunities in the market, how to work in a team, how to build culture, like all those things I really got from consulting. But what you don't get is making decisions that you actually make versus, making suggestions and actually operating. And I was really hungry to do
Yeah.
that. I felt like it was awesome to give people recommendations, but I wanted to go and build it myself. And so that was, I guess, a hard transition. And the scariest part of being a founder, I would say, is you have to make these decisions and you don't know if they're right or wrong. And you hope you're making the right one with the information you have and the people around you. And to me, having a co-founder is awesome for that. Nicole and I get to bounce ideas off each other and feel like we're in it together. So that's the biggest change. Operating and like running the company to me was kind of it didn't feel like a big hurdle, it just felt natural to me. And I think I just love getting things done and moving forward. And so that was actually an easier transition.
And of course, like because Raya Power is so mission oriented, like you have this mission at your core, you have this distinct purpose. Um, like in your own words, how would you describe your purpose as a startup, as a company?
Yeah, that part is so important to me. When I was at Bain, I got to do some work with the Nature Conservancy, and I just felt like a total change in my want to work, in my drive, in my desire. It was like, wow, I could work on this forever because I'm doing something impactful for the world. I'm helping people. And I think that changes how people show up for work and how
Yeah.
people want to work on teams. Like we've already seen inbound for people wanting to work for us, make a lot less
Wow.
money as a found like in a startup than they were making, but because of the mission. And to me, that's twofold. So I come at this from more the climate side,
Hmm.
and watching kind of the impact of what's happening with climate and wanting to be able to both prepare people with resilience and also move the needle on the clean energy side and, you know, incentivize electrification. And Nicole comes at this really deeply on the social impact and resilience side of how do we make sure most of these people who don't have solutions today, which is like 80% of the US, in our opinion, who can't get rooftop solar and storage, have those solutions when it matters most. And when you see, a natural disaster leave you without power and you really need it.
Yeah, because I know like from just reading about, the background to Raya Power that obviously, and as you said as well, there is these huge gaps in just the market and who was able to actually install solar power. But the reality on the ground, like obviously in Puerto Rico, because I know that's a big focus of Raya Power, was, I think following the Hurricane Maria that hit years ago, that people were left completely without power. And then like the realities sink in where it's like we don't actually have reliable energy to fuel to keep our house running, to keep the lights on. That to me, like just reading about the background to Raya Power as well was quite shocking to know that so many communities that are actually quite close to, you and myself don't actually have that reliable power, but it's something that we take for granted on an everyday basis, I suppose. Yeah, at the same time, like you see in the news, you see in government reports and everything, there's this huge pressure and huge push for a sustainable future, for renewable energy. But it's just, yeah, getting from there, from where we are now to getting there. Um, would you describe as like an uphill battle kind of thing as the situation stands, or?
Yeah. Um, I think initially when I got into this space, I was focused on like utility scale solar. And that would be kind of the renewable energy angle of it's the most cost-effective way to get more solar out in the world. So let's do these utility scale installations. Like, why would you do residential solar when it costs more on a per watt basis? Because you're doing these smaller systems. But what you quickly realize is that doesn't actually give individual homes resilience or backup in outages, right? If the grid goes off, that's going off. If there's
Yeah.
large scale transmission issues, that's not going to be there. And in addition to that, it has its own issues of, political battling to get the land for it, to get the interconnection queue with the utility. So what makes me really excited about what we're working on is by reducing all those barriers, taking away the need for interconnection, taking away the need for kind of like regulatory impasses in between, we can empower individuals to make that decision on their own and bring
Hmm.
that power home. Um, we actually saw Pakistan had this recently. They became like one of the biggest importers of solar panels. And it was all driven from distributed resources. Basically, a failing grid and high electricity prices pushed people to do whatever they could to bring it home and put it on their own
Yeah.
house. And so we see that in Puerto Rico, and I think we're going to see that more and more. I think the
Yeah.
DOE estimates outages could 100x to 2030 with growing
Yeah.
data centers and natural disasters. So it's just going to become more and more the reality in my view. And the more we can empower everyone to be part of that distributed future and have resilience, that's kind of core to what we're doing.
Yeah. And that word resilience is like I think on everyone's tongues when they're talking about the grid and like you mentioned the DOE in the US saying like, hey, with data centers and AI in the mix, like we're going to be facing more outages and just, saying straight up like the grid is not built for resilience as it stands. So that's where, startups like you come in because I know that the way I know it's been framed is that you're democratizing solar energy because it's, yeah, such an expensive investment for a lot of households that can't actually afford it but desperately need it. Um, and I know that you have a distinct pricing and product model itself. And I'd love to like touch on that a little bit as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, how your pricing and product model is designed to help people gain access to reliable solar power for their home or for their appliances?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I'll start by showing you mine. I can show you out the window here. You can see my system.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
So
that's
there.
really modular.
Yeah, exactly. So the way we looked at it is in order to really get this out to a lot of people, we need to reduce all those decision barriers and also structural hurdles for people getting solar and storage. So one
Yeah.
is right now to get residential solar and storage, you have to own your home, you need a new roof, you have to commit for this like 25-year lease or be
Yeah.
able to spend $20,000 or more up front. We wanted it to be, you decide on the product, you get it in your house, it's installed. So no home modifications, no permits, lower entry price. I really believe in an aftermarket. You could sell it to someone else. You could move with it. Like that just makes it so much easier to say yes. And then,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, the financing side. So, how do we make sure that we can offer loans, loan financing with local banks or our own lease financing in the future where we put the system down and you're already saving on your bills from day one and you have resilience for what matters. And that's doable with the hardware prices today and what we're seeing. And that's what's so
Hmm.
exciting is like we could literally bring this to people. They would save on their utility bill from the start and have that core resilience.
Amazing. Because I know that it's currently sitting around, what was it, like $6,000, but there are payment plans available, and yeah, so it's about that democratization. Like you're seeing that in the pricing as well.
Yeah, so where the pricing starts right now is in line with rooftop solar and storage in the US, kind of on a per watt basis. So if you were to take rooftop solar and storage, divide it into the size we have, it's kind of in a
Hmm.
similar price point, but it lets you get in at that lower price point. The problem with rooftop solar is once you've spent $5,000 to get a customer as a company, you now have to put this big system on the roof to make your economic
Yeah,
sense. So they can't sell smaller systems. So by packaging it this way, we can sell a more entry level system. Excuse me. And then as you mentioned, the financing, we can basically offer $0 down. You pay a monthly subscription or a monthly fee to a loan provider, and you get that reduction in your bill. And we're already seeing that with our pilot customers, the savings being real on their utility bills, which is really exciting.
wow.
Yeah, and then the goal also would be to build different product variations over time and have
Yeah,
different pricing as we go. We're obviously an early startup right now, but we're really excited to in a very short period of time not be an early startup and be one of the big energy players serving this market.
it's all incredibly exciting. And I'd actually, because Raya Power, as I know, is quite young still, but you've come a long way. Like you've raised over $1 million in pre-seed funding, and you've got multiple pilots happening, and already, from what I understand, there's people expressing huge interest in your products. Like I think, have you had people reach out to you saying, "Hey, like how can we get these products? How can we get this?"
Yeah, I think that's been the most exciting. So basically, within a year, we've designed, manufactured, produced these systems, installed pilots, got pre-sales, LOIs, and tons of inbound. The inbound's been really, really fun to see across the US, Europe, Latin America. We've got messages from
Wow.
everywhere. People basically being like, "Can I pay to ship this to myself? Like, when can I get it? I've been waiting for something like this." So we're really excited. We think the biggest unlock and why we're getting that is most people are, if they're facing resilience issues, their options are really a diesel generator or like a portable battery. And
Hmm.
those are both just costs, right? Something you buy sits in your closet until you need it and you run like an extension cord in an outage. Because we've
Yeah.
integrated the solar into our system and it's running every single day on your home, you get the benefit of like a rooftop solar system. Like you're offsetting your bill every month, which means it pays for itself. And a battery alone or a
Nice.
generator can never do that. So that's what's like fundamentally different is the integrated solar pays you basically to have resilience.
Not to mention as well, diesel generators are loud
Loud,
and
scary.
clunky.
We've heard a lot of like, I don't want my mom to use that. I don't want my grandparents to use that. I'd love to put
Yeah.
instead. So there's a lot of health and safety issues as well.
Yeah, and it's also got me thinking the time of year as well, like and with everything, all the crazy stuff that's going on in the world. I remember living in London a few years ago, and this was like 2022, 2023, when all the gas prices just skyrocketed. Like it was actually a really scary time because suddenly you were confronted with this, can I keep the heating on this
Yeah.
winter? And the reality was people couldn't afford to actually keep the heating on. It was really there were some really tragic, upsetting stories in the news, and I think that fear has kind of been revived again with what's happening in the Hormuz Strait. So do you think like Raya Power would be able to help there in
Yeah.
in Northern Europe, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, it's so real what you said, and where we saw it, where we're like our first markets, for example, California, in the Central Valley, we've talked to people who can't turn their air conditioners on in the summer because it's so expensive to run. Electricity
Yeah.
prices here can be like 45 cents a kilowatt hour, like just insane.
Wow.
And so people are, I think over 30% of Americans struggle to pay their electricity bill. And so it's times like that where you're like, you need heating, you need cooling, and you can't turn it on. That's like obviously the impact we want to have is you've already purchased this, you've locked in the price or the monthly subscription where you're saving already. And as bills go up, you're saving even more, right? Like you've locked in this price and utility prices go up, you're just
Yeah.
saving more. And you get to have that knowing you can run whatever you choose to run on the system and prioritize that at that fixed rate that's not going to go up on you. And so that feels really good to be able to give people, especially in times like this.
Yeah, and I don't think it just empowers people, but also gives them dignity, much
Mm.
needed dignity, because there is that dimension during these really difficult times where people, like they're living really uncomfortably, like you said, the peak of summer and you can't even put the aircon on, or the dead of winter and you're freezing, but you can't afford to put the heating on either. Um, and yeah, people shouldn't have to struggle like that in this day and age. Um, and so the democratization of solar power, like we have the sun there.
Yeah,
Just a matter of bringing the energy to people who desperately need it, which is, I think, rising in numbers, as you've said, like 30% of Americans not being able to foot the bill, the
yeah,
electricity bill. And that's not no fault of their own. It's just, I think, a reflection of a wider system that's designed to not succeed in times
yeah.
like these, quite frankly. And
We've
obviously,
had, oh,
sorry,
sorry.
you go. No, no, you
No,
go
I was
ahead.
going to say we had just the word when you mentioned dignity at the starting, like one of our pilot customers, we asked them how the system was going after using it for a month or two, and their response was like, I finally feel like I have dignity. Like this is what it feels like to have first world energy. I can go to the grocery store and buy food for more than the next 2 days because I
Oh,
know my fridge
wow.
is going to turn off. And like in an outage, they threw an extension cord out their window for all their neighbors to charge their phones. And like just that, being able to give that to people and see the behavior change already is so empowering. And then the other part you said is like, that was my biggest frustration with, I guess, the climate movement is we're all trying to figure out the next best technology, but we have so much technology that we haven't deployed. And it's all of these other hurdles in the way. And that's where I got excited about solar is like, there's got to be a better way to package it and get it to people. It exists, the sun exists, we know we can use it to make power. Like, let's find more ways to get that to everyone possible when we can. And so that was a lot of the ethos for what we did too.
Yeah. And the fact that they're not stressing about, because a lot of people rent, and I think nowadays more people are going to be renting for a longer time. So that aspect as well, like, oh man, I don't want to sink money into this and then have to leave it or whatever. Like you've also removed that worry from the
Yeah.
equation. Like it's something that, comes with you as you move through your stages of life, which I think is just so unique and again, so empowering for people. It's a reassurance. Um, because yeah, it's something that really surprised me reading into solar power and the gaps, the ongoing gaps, because I remember being a kid, being in school and hearing so much like when we talked about sustainability and the environment, like solar power always came top of the agenda, but the needle has barely moved it. I feel like just as someone who's not in the arena, but
Yeah.
just reading about it, it hasn't really moved, which is kind of shocking. So startups like founders like you saying, chop chop, like we really need to get this going, guys.
Yeah.
Because there are people who desperately need it.
Exactly. And I mean, solar has, like, from a technological point of view, or I guess from a price point of view, come down a lot in the past decade or two. We have seen a lot more installations on the utility scale side in a lot of places, which is super exciting to see. Like, I love driving past a solar field. But on the resi side, we've gotten in our own way in a lot of ways. There are some places that have done it really well, like Australia. They've gotten the price down and been able to get it out to a lot of homes. Um, but yeah, I think it's just working with the existing constraints in the environment you're in and how can we get that to more people is really important.
Out of curiosity, this is just kind of like a side question. Which countries or, areas in the world have do you know need this the
Mm,
most? Like there's this urgent
yeah.
need, there's this lack of energy reliability. Because I know Puerto Rico is one.
Yeah, Puerto Rico is one of them. I know South Africa has a lot of rolling blackouts. There's a lot of places. I mean, obviously Africa largely, and there's been a lot
Hmm.
of players in the solar space working on smaller systems that fit what they're looking to run there better. And so really exciting to watch some of those. Like D-Light has done an incredible job over the past decade building options there. And there it's, having power versus not having power. And so that's
Hmm.
like really important as well. And then where we see kind of the outages growing across the US, honestly, even there's all these neighborhoods called public safety power shutoff areas where the utilities have to shut off the grid if there's a potential fire coming or a natural disaster.
Oh yeah.
That's only growing in frequency and duration. And then we got a lot of interest as well from the Caribbean and Latin America. So Cuba, for example, Jamaica after the hurricane, different parts of Latin America, we've gotten like, hey, I have outages all the time and no solution. So I don't think the problem is small. And I think it's growing in importance in a lot of places. Like the grid is one of the coolest human-made things we've done that works in general, but it was built a long time ago and it has,
Yeah.
but now we're transitioning into these massive data centers for AI, like electrification, and the initial grid just wasn't built for that. And so we're kind of seeing this change, and I guess that's also how I view a change in solar power. So thinking about when we were young and hearing about it younger, we're still young. When we were younger in school, um, it was very much like a climate focused thing narrative there, I would say, for residents.
Yeah.
Whereas now I would say it's becoming more of a necessity. Like in Puerto Rico, no one talks to you about solar because it's a climate solution. Everyone talks to you about solar because it reduces their bills and gives them resilience if they have a battery with it. And
Yeah.
so it's like to me, like there's a new wave of solar, which is just the like necessity of having your own power given the affordability and outage crisis we're getting into.
Yeah, and that's changing the whole trajectory and the whole narrative around it. And again, the urgency. Like there's just
Yeah.
this, yeah, growing and growing urgency with all these crazy things happening in the world. Um, I know as well that, like we touched on this briefly, but you've had multiple pilots happening. I know one was in Puerto Rico, I think the other two in the US. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, and I know your pilot that's happening or has happened in Puerto Rico. As part of that, you've been involved with training people from the local community to become installers, to have that local empowerment. And this actually really stood out to me. I was reading that about 41% of those trainee graduates are actually women.
Mm.
Um, and I think this is a really important topic to touch on, like the female empowerment specifically. Obviously, you're a female-founded startup. You and Nicole together are, you know, um, a female team. Um, and energy generally, the industry is just so male dominant. So it's really cool to see that you're actually helping open up like the women's role in that side of things. Um, I just wanted to explore like a little bit. Is this something that you've encountered as well, where it's just very male dominated? Do you think that there's this need to get women more involved in the trenches as well,
Yeah,
as pillars of the community?
absolutely. 100%. It is such a like exciting part of what we're doing. And I think if anything, like getting to just show more people that women can play a big role in this space. It starts from like us in Puerto Rico going to the hardware store and everyone being like, who's this woman? Or like Nicole and I driving a box truck to our first installations and like people were like laughing as we drove down the street because it's like we're like in workwear and like installing this thing and it's no one's used to seeing that, right? And
Yeah,
so it's to me so special to get to start putting more data points out there because like stereotypes are just a bunch of data points that our, brains use to categorize things. And so the more we can get um women narratives out there and images of that and show young girls that you could do this, like that's so incredibly cool. I've never had someone come to my house to fix something who was a woman. It was always a man. Uh,
either.
and so like having women installers would be the dream. And we are trying to involve more women where I would say that program is Grid Alternatives in Puerto Rico did this incredible job and is still doing of training local people on installing solar systems. And they have a big portion of their training fleet that's women, which is so awesome. And so we're trying to get those integrated into our assembly and installation processes as much as possible. Um, And the other part that I think is really awesome is, as you said, like women are so integral to communities. Women make like 85% of purchasing decisions. And I don't know any other battery or solar company for your home that really has like women designers at its core, women in the communications and the way that you're
Yeah.
getting it out to people, at least like in an executive role. And so we're excited to just be able to bring a different feeling to what a home energy company can be, to the way we interact with people. Um, and we're seeing it a lot in inbound people wanting to work for us, which is really exciting. It's been like mostly women. Our product advisor was like, you can hire men. And we're like, sure, but why wouldn't we hire women if they're available?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
let's flip the narrative here.
Yeah, there's so much talent, so much potential among women. And, for so long, we've been sidelined, especially in STEM, particularly in energy as well. So I think, yeah, the fact, women have the lion's share of purchasing decisions in general, like that's a huge factor, but also this untapped talent and potential. And particularly, I think in like more rural communities where you get more traditional, roles assigned, going in there and saying like empowering the local communities, like you can have these opportunities for self-sufficiency, for that self-resilience as well. I think it's so important. It's a lens that's not often examined, I would say, in energy. Like it tends to focus on the cost savings, obviously, which are very important factors, the environmental aspect, but that social aspect is still hugely important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's,
And I think it's like on the education side there too, making sure
yeah,
women don't get left behind on this conversation, like knowing what a solar panel is and how it works and what a watt is and how you could equip your family for resilience in the next outage and not having to rely on someone else to tell you that, but feeling empowered with that information yourself.
yeah, yeah. So it's so cool to see, Raya Power getting involved with that and helping helping build that momentum and awareness and driving those, very applicable skills and otherwise, in people who otherwise wouldn't necessarily have them. Not just in Puerto Rico, but around the world. Like I can say in Ireland, Oman, here in Colombia, the US, as we know, like everyone benefits when more
Hmm.
people have the know-how. Um, so obviously you've made so much progress since founding Raya Power. Um, and I'd love to hear, like, what are you excited about, like, looking to the future? What's on the horizon?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited to be able to serve everyone who wants a Raya. We got all this incredible inbound, and we're like, how do we move fast enough to get this to people? And the first stories we're hearing from our pilots, I can't wait to just have more of those out in the world and impact more people. And
Hmm.
every time there's a natural disaster or something, we're like, I wish we had systems ready to get to people. So just so excited to be able to have that impact. So excited to grow the team. We love team and culture and all of that. And I think it'll just be so awesome to have a bunch more Meghan and Nicole's running at this problem together, and really, amplifying our impact there. And then in kind of I think a lot of the things we talked about, I'm just excited for those to be more, and how we do more and more of that across, the US and beyond. And then eventually how we become like this brand name for energy for middle income and low income and, everyone who's not really talked to today about energy. Like how do we really fill that space as Raya, and continue on with the home intelligence into the future? So how can we help you upgrade appliances to become more efficient, given what we know from your plugged in devices? How can we help you participate in utility programs? Like right now, virtual power plants, most people who can participate have a Tesla Powerwall, but everyone else doesn't. And so how can we make sure that people with Raya can participate in those grid savings and helping the grid there? So just finding different ways to continue to make everyone part of this transition and being that company that's doing that is
Yeah,
really exciting to us.
yeah, amazing. Yeah, it's just incredible to realize like the deeply entrenched inequalities and what needs to happen there and what you are doing to help close those gaps that continue to plague renewable energy. Um, I do hope that quality comes to fruition sooner rather than later. So I am really excited to see Raya Power continue to grow in Puerto Rico and beyond, and seeing your product scale, seeing more customers being able to actually use these as well. Like I think there's this huge need as we've talked about. Um, Meghan, thank you so much for speaking with me today. Just before we go, where's the best place to keep a tab on, Raya Power's products, news, and updates?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I would say the most fun place would be our Instagram. So Raya Power Official
Okay.
is our Instagram, and that's where you can see videos of us and product updates. If you're on the business side, LinkedIn's a great place to follow us. And then our website, you can find more information and always reach out at info@rayapower.com.
Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of Founders on the Beat, and I hope you learned as much as I did from Meghan. Keep an eye out for our next episode, and don't forget to follow us for more updates.